stardust in her wake. The Nexus station hummed with activity as Talia moved through the crowded transit hub, her purple skin seeming to absorb the harsh artificial light rather than reflect it. She kept her gaze lowered, accustomed to the stares that followed her. The translucent fins along her forearms flattened against her skin, an involuntary response to anxiety that none of the humans around her would recognize. "Excuse me," a gruff voice muttered as someone bumped her shoulder, then quickly stepped away without meeting her gaze. Talia had been on the station for 3 lunar cycles, yet the isolation felt heavier each day. Her assignment as a botanical researcher from Novolux was prestigious, but the social reality was proving more challenging than she'd anticipated. The station's central promenade stretched before her, lined with shops and dining establishments filled with humans and the occasional Terran-allied species, none from her world. She quickened her pace toward the research sector, where at least her work provided purpose. Botanical researcher Talia. Access granted, the automated system announced as she pressed her palm to the scanner outside the arboretum. The doors slid open, releasing a burst of humid air scented with earth and green-growing things. Only here, among the carefully cultivated plants from a dozen worlds, did Talia feel her shoulders relax. The arboretum was her sanctuary, a place where her differences became irrelevant. Her purple fingers, each with 5 delicate digits, moved gracefully among the specimens, checking moisture levels and growth patterns. "You've got quite a touch with the Jovian moonflowers," a voice said from behind her. Talia spun around, her bioluminescent freckles flaring briefly in surprise. A human man stood watching her, his expression curious rather than judgmental. He wore the blue uniform of the astronomical division, dark hair falling across his forehead. "They respond well to gentle handling," she replied, her voice melodic with the slight accent of her native tongue. "Most people think they're too delicate to thrive here. Most people don't look closely enough at beautiful things," he said, stepping closer to examine the iridescent blooms. "I'm Julian Reed, astronomical cartography, Talia," she offered, deliberately omitting her clan designation, which humans found unpronounceable. "Botanical Research Novolux Delegation," Julian smiled, creating small creases around his eyes. "Novalix, that's in the Cygnus sector, right? I've been mapping that region for months." His enthusiasm seemed genuine, unlike the forced politeness she typically encountered. "Yes," she said, surprise evident in her voice. "Few humans know of it. The light patterns there are unlike anything in our charts," Julian explained, gesturing with his hands as he spoke. "There's a pulsar near your system that creates the most extraordinary radiation signature. I've been trying to capture it in my work." "Your work?" Talia asked. "I map stars officially, but I paint them unofficially," he said with a slight shrug. "It helps me understand what I'm seeing in a different way." For the first time in weeks, Talia felt curiosity replace her constant caution. "I would like to see that sometime." Julian's smile widened. "I have a studio space in the residential ring, perhaps after your shift." Talia hesitated, her inner eyelids blinking rapidly in consideration. Social invitations from humans were rare. Her supervisor had warned about cultural misunderstandings. "Just art," Julian added, seeming to sense her hesitation. "And maybe you could tell me about the night sky from Novolux, for research purposes, of course." "For research." Talia agreed, her lips curving upward slightly. "I finish here at 1800 station time." As Julian departed with a friendly wave, Talia returned to her moonflowers, but her thoughts remained on their conversation. Perhaps, she thought, there was room for connection here after all. The station continued its eternal orbit, stars sliding past the arboretum's transparent ceiling as Talia worked, a small hope taking root alongside the alien blooms under her care, colors beyond sight. The observation deck in Julian's studio apartment cast prismatic patterns across the floor as Talia stepped inside. Her eyes widened at the panoramic view of space stretching before her. The walls were covered with paintings, nebulae in swirling purples and blues, binary stars locked in eternal dance and cosmic phenomena rendered with passionate precision. "This is extraordinary," she whispered, moving closer to a canvas depicting a familiar celestial formation. "That's the lyrical cascade. It's visible from the northern hemisphere of my homeworld," Julian approached, standing beside her but maintaining a respectful distance. "You recognized it," he said, pleasure evident in his voice. "I've only seen it through telescope imagery, during the winter solstice. It aligns perfectly with our largest moon," Talia explained, her purple fingers hovering near the canvas without touching it. "Our poets say it's the universe singing to us." "That's exactly what I was trying to capture." Julian's eyes lit up. "The way the stellar gases seem to flow like music. When I map stars, I'm recording coordinates and radiation signatures. But when I paint them, I'm trying to show what they make me feel." Talia turned to him, her head tilted slightly in curiosity. "Humans don't typically discuss feelings with strangers from other worlds." Julian laughed softly. "I've never been typical. My colleagues in astronomy say I should stick to scientific observation." He shrugged. "But I believe there's more to understanding the universe than cataloging its parts." He gestured toward a small sitting area where he'd prepared tea. "Would you like some?" "It's a blend with jasmine. Not sure if it suits your taste, but it's my favorite." Talia nodded, settling onto the cushioned bench. Julian's quarters were modest but warm, unlike the sterile functionality of most station accommodations. Small plants occupied every available surface, and soft instrumental music played quietly in the background. "On Novolux, we believe that understanding comes through connection," she said, accepting the offered cup. The warmth seeped through her sensitive fingers. "My people are natural empaths, not mind readers," she added quickly. Seeing his expression, "We sense emotional states, especially strong ones." Julian sat across from her, looking intrigued rather than uncomfortable. "That must be overwhelming on a station this size." "It can be," she admitted. "That's why I spend so much time in the Arboretum. Plants have simpler emotional signatures, more peaceful." "And what about me?" Julian asked, leaning forward slightly. "What do you sense now?" Talia focused, allowing her perceptive abilities to extend gently toward him. "Curiosity," she said after a moment. "Openness. And something like anticipation, but not fear or disgust, which is unusual when humans learn of this ability." Julian smiled. "I've spent my life studying things beyond ordinary human perception. Gravitational waves, dark matter, radiation spectrums we can only detect with instruments." He gestured to his paintings. "I'm fascinated by the invisible forces that shape our universe. Your empathic sense is just another wonder I hadn't encountered before." For the first time since arriving at Nexus Station, Talia felt her guard truly lowering. She sipped her tea, finding the floral notes pleasant against her palate. "Your work captures something of what I perceive," she said, nodding toward a particularly vibrant depiction of a stellar nursery, "the emotions of celestial events." "Really?" Julian's expression brightened. "I've always felt that stars have moods. The scientists call me fanciful, but they do," Talia confirmed. "Not consciousness as we understand it, but patterns, rhythms, harmonies. My people have names for star feelings that don't translate well." Julian leaned back, regarding her with newfound wonder. "Would you tell me some of them? Even if they don't translate?" Hours passed as they talked, Julian sketching quick impressions as Talia described the emotional landscapes of her world. She demonstrated how her native language incorporated tonal shifts to convey empathic nuances, and he showed her his star charts explaining how he translated cold data into art. The station's night cycle was well underway when Talia realized how long they'd been talking. "I should return to my quarters," she said reluctantly. "My shift begins early tomorrow." Julian nodded, walking her to the door. "I'm mapping the sector near the Serene Nebula tomorrow," he said. "It's supposed to be spectacular. Would you consider joining me in the observatory? Your perspective would be invaluable." Talia felt a warm flutter in her chest, an emotion she hadn't experienced since leaving home. "For research purposes?" she asked, echoing his words from earlier with a small smile. "Absolutely," Julian replied, returning her smile with one of his own. "Purely scientific inquiry." As she made her way back through the quieter nighttime corridors, Talia found herself looking forward to tomorrow for the first time since arriving on Nexus. The stars visible through the station's observation panels seemed to shine a little brighter, as if acknowledging her newfound connection in this distant corner of space. Eclipse of doubt. The observatory dome glittered with holographic star systems as Talia entered. Her steps light despite her exhaustion from a double shift in the arboretum. The vast circular room was mostly empty. With only a few scientists hunched over their workstations, Julian stood at the central mapping console, his face illuminated by the glow of projected celestial bodies. He looked up as she approached, his smile immediate and warm. "You came," he said, as though he'd been uncertain. "I said I would," Talia replied, the fins along her forearms rippling slightly, a sign of pleasure that she no longer tried to suppress in his presence. Over the past 3 weeks, they had fallen into an easy routine, meeting after shifts to share meals or explore the less frequented parts of the station. Julian had introduced her to Earth music and Terran poetry. She had taught him Novaluxian constellation stories and shown him how her skin's bioluminescence could mirror the patterns of starlight. "I'm about to render the serene nebula." Julian gestured to the empty space above the holographic projector. "The data just came in from our deep space probes." Talia stepped closer, watching as Julian's fingers danced across the controls. The air above them shimmered and then exploded into color, swirling gases in shades of amber and violet, punctuated by newly forming stars that burned bright white against the cosmic canvas. "It's beautiful," she whispered, her eyes reflecting the nebula's glow. "Beautiful doesn't begin to cover it," Julian murmured. But when Talia glanced at him, she realized he was looking at her, not the nebula. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Then a sharp voice cut through the air. "Reed, is this the alien you've been neglecting your work for?" A tall human with severe features and a senior researcher's insignia approached. His gaze swept over Talia with thinly veiled distaste. "Dr. Marcus." Julian's voice cooled noticeably. "This is botanical researcher Talia from the Novalux delegation. She's been helping me understand the stellar formations near her home system." Marcus arched an eyebrow. "Helping you? I wasn't aware the purple ones had advanced astronomical knowledge. I thought they were plant tenders." Talia felt her inner eyelids close reflexively, a defensive mechanism against the man's hostility. "We have studied the stars for millennia," she said quietly. "Our navigation systems were interstellar, while humans still sailed wooden ships on Earth's oceans." Marcus's expression hardened. "Well, this is a human research facility, not a cultural exchange. Julian has deadlines to meet." He turned to Julian. "The director wants the Serene Nebula mapping completed by tomorrow. Not artistically interpreted. Mapped. Scientifically." "I'll have it done," Julian said, his jaw tightening. "See that you do." Marcus cast another disapproving glance at Talia before walking away. A heavy silence fell between them. Julian exhaled slowly. "I'm sorry about that. Marcus is—" "You don't need to explain," Talia said. "I've encountered his type before. He doesn't speak for all of us, doesn't he?" Talia looked around the observatory where other researchers were now watching them with poorly concealed curiosity. "Perhaps your colleague is right. I should not distract you from your work." Julian reached for her hand, then hesitated, uncertain if the gesture would be welcome. "You're not a distraction. Talia, you've helped me see the stars in ways I never could before." The sincerity in his voice touched her, but doubt had taken root. The last few weeks had been a respite from reality, but Marcus's intervention had shattered the illusion. She was still an alien on a human station, still the object of whispers and stares. "I have additional specimens arriving tomorrow," she said, stepping back slightly. "I should prepare." "Talia." Julian's voice held a note of desperation. "Don't let him ruin what we've found here." She met his gaze, wishing she could explain the complexity of her feelings. How could she tell him that she feared not just rejection, but the possibility that this connection between them was merely his fascination with the exotic? How could she admit that she'd begun to feel emotions for him that went beyond friendship, beyond scientific curiosity? "I need time to think," she finally said. Julian nodded, visibly restraining himself from pushing further. "I understand. But please remember, not everyone shares Marcus's views." As Talia left the observatory, she felt eyes following her. In the corridor outside, She overheard a snippet of conversation between two passing technicians. "That's the one who's been hanging around Reed. Did you see those weird fins? Can you imagine?" Talia quickened her pace, her earlier lightness evaporating. The station suddenly felt smaller, more confined than ever. For 3 beautiful weeks, she had allowed herself to forget the gulf between their worlds. Now reality reasserted itself with cruel efficiency. Back in her sparse quarters, she stood before the small mirror, studying her purple skin, the luminescent freckles across her face, the delicate fins that humans found so strange. Julian saw beauty in cosmic phenomena that others reduced to data points. Could he truly see her the same way, or was she simply another curiosity to study and eventually catalog? Outside her viewport, the vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly. Somewhere out there was Novolux, where she wouldn't be a spectacle or an oddity. Yet for the first time, the thought of returning home didn't bring comfort, because home no longer had Julian Reed, with his artist's eyes and his belief that understanding came through connection. Talia pressed her palm against the cool glass of the viewport, watching as her bioluminescence dimmed in response to her sadness. Across the station, she knew he was mapping stars without her, and the distance between them suddenly felt greater than any cosmic measurement could express. Constellation of Trust, the emergency sirens wailed across Nexus Station, bathing the corridors in pulsing red light. Talia raced toward the arboretum, heart pounding. The station's automated voice announced over the intercom, "Atmospheric contamination detected in Research Sector 7. All personnel evacuate immediately." That was her sector, her plants, her work. 3 days had passed since she'd left Julian in the observatory. 3 days of avoiding the astronomical wing and burying herself in research. The arboretum doors slid open, revealing chaos. Toxic gas from a ruptured cooling system was pouring into the adjacent lab, threatening to spread. Several researchers lay unconscious near the entrance. "We need to seal the ventilation system," a security officer shouted, his face covered with a breathing apparatus. Talia felt the panic around her like physical blows against her empathic senses. Without hesitation, she pressed forward, her Novoluxian physiology more resistant to the gas than human lungs. "Talia, stop." Julian's voice cut through the chaos. He appeared at her side, wearing a breather mask. "You can't go in there." "My research," she gasped. "And those people, I can help them." Understanding flashed in his eyes. He nodded and handed her his mask. "I'll help evacuate, be careful." Together they worked through the crisis, Julian helping injured scientists to safety while Talia, using her botanical knowledge and natural resistance, identified the chemical reaction and helped neutralize it. Her empathic abilities allowed her to locate 2 unconscious researchers hidden behind equipment. Hours later, as the emergency teams completed their work, Talia found herself seated in the medical bay beside Julian. The station director stood before them, flanked by Dr. Marcus and several senior staff. "Your quick thinking saved lives today," the director said, looking directly at Talia, "and prevented the loss of irreplaceable research." "She shouldn't have been there at all," Marcus interjected. "Protocol clearly states protocol would have cost lives." Julian stood facing his superior. Talia's abilities, both her botanical knowledge and her natural gifts, made all the difference. "It's time we recognize that diversity isn't just something we tolerate on this station. It's our strength." The director studied them both, then nodded slowly. "Agreed, Miss Talia. We would like to formally recognize your contribution, and I believe we should discuss expanding the Xenobiological Cooperation Program." Later, as they stood alone in a quiet observation lounge, Julian took Talia's purple hands in his. "I missed you these past days," he said simply. "I was afraid," she admitted. "Not of the prejudice, but of what I feel for you. The depth of it." Julian's fingers gently traced the luminescent patterns on her wrist. "I don't care what Marcus or anyone thinks. What matters is this connection between us. It's real, Talia. As real as any star or planet." As the station hummed around them, Talia felt the sincerity in his emotions, bright and clear like distant suns. She leaned forward, their foreheads touching in the Novoluxian gesture of deepest trust. Like constellations, she whispered. Separate stars that form something beautiful when connected. Julian smiled, understanding perfectly. Exactly like that. Universal language 6 months later, Talia stood in Julian's studio, now their shared space, watching him add final touches to his largest painting yet. The canvas stretched nearly wall to wall, depicting the view from Novalux's highest mountain at dawn, a landscape he had never seen except through her memories and descriptions. "Is the second moon too bright?" he asked, stepping back to examine his work. Talia moved beside him, her purple skin glowing softly in contentment. "It's perfect," she said. "You've captured it exactly as it appears during the stellar alignment." The painting was to be the centerpiece of their exhibition. Perspectives Beyond, a dual vision of the cosmos, opening the following day in the station's central gallery. What had begun as Julian sharing his art with her had evolved into a collaborative project, combining his human artistic interpretation with her Novaluxian empathic perception of celestial phenomena. "I still can't believe Director Chen approved this exhibition," Julian said, cleaning his brushes. "6 months ago, people like Marcus were trying to keep us apart. Things change." Talia replied, her fingers intertwining with his. "People change when given the chance." The emergency in the Arboretum had marked a turning point. Talia's actions had saved lives and irreplaceable research. In the aftermath, the station administration had been forced to acknowledge the value of interspecies cooperation. Even Marcus had grudgingly admitted that her botanical expertise was an asset to the station. But more importantly, their relationship had flourished in the open. What began as a connection between two curious souls had deepened into something neither had expected to find so far from their respective homes. "Have you thought more about the offer?" Julian asked, setting his palette aside. Talia nodded slowly. Her research assignment on Nexus was ending in 2 weeks. The Novaluxian Science Council had requested her return, but simultaneously, Earth's Interstellar Academy had extended an invitation for her to join their xenobotanical faculty, with Julian offered a position in their astronomical division. "I've composed my response," she said. "I'm accepting the Academy's offer." Julian's face lit up with joy, but he quickly tempered his reaction. "Are you certain? Novalux is your home. Home is more than a place," she said, taking both his hands in hers. "Home is where we both can pursue our work, share our perspectives, and build something new. Together," he pulled her close, his forehead touching hers in the Novaluxian gesture they now shared. "Together," he agreed. The exhibition opening the next day exceeded all expectations. Station residents from all divisions attended, along with visiting dignitaries from 3 planetary systems. As Julian and Talia guided groups through their collaborative works, explaining the unique merger of human artistic tradition and Novaluxian empathic perception, they noticed something remarkable happening. Humans were engaged in animated conversations with non-human visitors. Questions about cultural perspectives and sensory experiences were being exchanged without the usual barriers of caution or prejudice. Their art had created a neutral ground where curiosity trumped fear of difference. "Your work is groundbreaking," the Academy's representative told them at the reception afterward. "Not just artistically, but diplomatically. You've created a new language for interspecies understanding." Later that night, as the station's lights dimmed for the sleep cycle, Julian and Talia stood at their viewport, watching as Novalux came into view, a distant blue-green sphere against the blackness of space. "Will you miss it?" Julian asked softly. Talia considered the planet of her birth, feeling a gentle nostalgia rather than the sharp longing she'd expected. "I'll carry it with me," she said, "just as you carry Earth. Our worlds have shaped us, but they don't define our future." Julian reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object, a ring crafted from iridescent metal, set with a tiny fragment of meteorite. "I had this made from that meteorite we watched enter the station's collection field," he said, his voice slightly nervous. "The one we said brought us together, Julian," she whispered, understanding the human custom he was invoking. "On Earth, we have a tradition when we find someone we want to build a future with," he explained, though she already knew. "I'm not sure if Novalux has something similar, but we do." Talia said, her luminescent freckles glowing brightly with emotion. We call it joining paths under the same stars. He smiled at that. Perfect description. Talia, will you join paths with me, under whatever stars we find ourselves? Yes, she said simply, extending her hand. As Julian slipped the ring onto her purple finger, Talia felt the empathic connection between them strengthen. Not just emotion, but something deeper and more profound. In that moment, the differences that had once seemed so vast, human and Novoluxian, Earth and distant world, faded into insignificance. Outside their viewport, stars continued their eternal dance. Nebulae swirled in cosmic patterns, and new worlds formed from stellar dust. Within the station, two beings from different worlds had found what poets and scientists across the universe had sought for millennia: a bridge across the void, a connection that transcended physical form. Look, Julian pointed to where a comet was passing, its tail streaming light across the darkness. Make a wish. That's another Earth tradition. Talia smiled, leaning against him. No need, she said softly. Everything I could wish for is already here. As the comet faded from view, they remained at the viewport, silhouettes against the backdrop of infinite space. Two different beings from worlds light years apart, yet joined by the universal language they had created together. A language of art and science, of empathy and understanding, of love that recognized no boundaries, not even those between the stars.